Welcome everyone to Tales from the 90s, your retro time machine back to my favorite time period, the 1990s. This week we're on episode 61. I can't believe we had 61 episodes so far. It's been fun. It's never gotten old or repetitive or, I got to do the podcast this week. I've always looked forward to it. I put a lot of work into it. I probably put 2 or 3 hours of research into it, looking up facts and stuff so I get everything right. And then, of course, I just go off memory. Of what I remember. I don't, write down my memories. I just kind of let it flow. Sometimes I let it flow too much, but anyway, as I'm doing in this intro, we're going to April of 1995. This is my 6th trip through 1995 on the podcast, so let's go.
Viewer warning. The following program contains material that may be too intense for some viewers. Parental discretion is advised. Where every tale begins. Tales from the crypt, marathons, wrestling wars and morning yawns. Play kickball in the street, man, those days can't be beat. Tales from the 90s never die.
Yeah, been, like I said, 61 episodes. If you don't know the format, I pick a random month and year, and then I do a deep dive into it, research stuff, my own memories. But we're on April 1995, and this is my 6th trip through 1995. But before I get into it, I do want to mention that I do have bonus episodes. I do one a month, and it could be about any topic at all. And there's definitely going to be some 90s stuff in it, but it's not restricted just to the 90s. So, that's why I make it a bonus episode. On here, I try to stick right to the month and the year. But anyway, bonus episode. I can't talk today. That's really good on a podcast. As you guys, if you've seen this more than once, you know that frequently happens a lot. Anyway, bonus episode number 16 will be on January 26th. It'll drop. It'll be the last Monday of the month. And it's all about wrestling magazines. And I've told a little bit about my history, my criminal history of... of how I got some of these magazines that I'm not proud of. I make a joke out of it now, but if I'd have caught one of my kids doing this, they would have been in deep trouble. But anyway, that's just a little part of the story. It's just all about my love of wrestling magazines and how really wrestling magazines actually got me hooked into watching it more regularly. I'd just been, it was on, so I'd watch it. But the magazines and the stories and stuff actually got me focused into the story, and then where I'd start watching every week. So I have wrestling magazines to thank for that. But anyway, you'll hear about that then. This is 1995 of April of 1995. At the time, I was 11 years old in 5th grade, so getting towards the end of 5th grade and elementary school, because I've mentioned before that our elementary school only went to 5th grade. Some went to 6th grade, and then their middle school started, or junior high, whatever you called it. Ours was middle school. A lot of differences, and not even always had to do with where you live. Like, I knew there were schools, not too far away that called them junior high. It's just whatever they call it, middle school, junior high. It's all the same thing. It's before high school. Anyway, I'll get into a little bit of that later. But I want to start off with some sports. Crappy time for baseball going on. Of course, the season before, the 1994 baseball strike just ruined baseball, and a lot of people were upset for a few years. And in fact, the season didn't even start till April 25th. Usually the season starts, it's supposed to start April 1st. Nowadays it starts like the late March. And it's I don't know, it just don't feel the same though as it used to. April 1st, it wasn't always the 1st, but somewhere around there. It's usually the first Monday of the month. Then they started doing they're going to start a game early, usually with the Yankees, because it's on ESPN, and all they care about is the Yankees and Red Sox. But now it's the Dodgers, I think. But anyway, then they was okay, we'll start one game on Sunday anyway. The Reds always get an opening day game at home, which is always cool. We have one of the oldest opening day parades, and it's just, if you're from Cincinnati, as you can tell, you probably don't recognize that if you haven't watched the last couple years of baseball. It's the City Connect hats. I thought it was really cool, so I had to get this hat. But I definitely love the classic jerseys. I know this has nothing to do with this, but The Big Red Machine era is probably my favorite jerseys. I also like the ones from the 90s too. Big surprise. Where they had black into their color, which is, you know, they're if you see their jerseys now, it's like all black with, you know, this red lettering on it. It's really cool looking. Anyway, I'm already off the rails. Anyway, the season didn't start until April 25th because they didn't get the strike resolved until late, and they had to have time to do some preseason games because they couldn't just, you know, go into the season, you know, not ready. So, you know, while the season's supposed to be starting, they're doing spring training, which is where they go down. It's in Florida and Arizona now. I don't know if they were doing Arizona then. They might have been. But anyway, the Reds used to be, spring training used to be in Florida. Now it's in Arizona. But anyway, yeah, they were doing that to get ready. So the season didn't start till the 25th. The season opened with, like, everybody booing at every game. There was actually protests. People actually went onto the field protesting. It was crazy. It really wasn't until that 1998, and I know steroids this, steroid that, but the 1998 home run chase between McGwire and Sosa really is what brought people back to baseball. And I think they've done a good job the last few years of bringing people back with some of the rule changes. Some of the ones I've seen proposed are just insane, like having a split season they're talking about now, and having like an in-season, like, little mini tournament. It's like, woo, we won a tournament in the middle of the season. Well, did you win the World Series? Because if not, it don't matter. Like basketball has their little tournament in the middle of the season. Just stupid stuff like that. They don't need to change that much. But anyway, trying not to get out of the 90s here. At the beginning, like, I talk about only the 90s here, and then I start talking about today. Anyway, the Reds, well, first of all, before I say that, the Rockies, which came into the league 2 years prior in '93, I think they were using the Broncos Stadium, and I don't know if it's the same one they have now. It probably is. I think it's Mile High Stadium, unless the Broncos don't play there anymore. Anyway, this is the first season that they started playing at Coors Field, which of course they still play at now. What a concept! Have a stadium last more than 5 years. It seems like stadiums these days just like they keep building new ones. But anyway, the Reds started this since the 25th was when the season started. Very short time period to give standings, so I won't. But it's interesting to note that the Reds went 0-5 to open the season, and you're like, oh great. If you're a Reds fan, like, well, we're done. Why even bother watching baseball? I didn't want to watch it anyway because of the rich, freaking greedy owners and players and everybody involved. But actually, the Reds would actually end up turning that around. They would win the division, the Central, and then they would end up sweeping the Dodgers in the first round of the playoffs, and then they got swept, of course, by the Braves in the series to get to the World Series. But, you know, of course, the Braves in the mid-'90s, of course, you know, no, it's no, like, bad thing on your record that you were beaten by the Braves. But, yeah, the Reds started out 0-5 and then ended up winning the division. And I think the year before they were going to make the playoffs, but of course, strike ruined that. There was no World Series for the first time in forever. I think the last time there was one, I think it had to do with, like, one of the World Wars, unless I'm completely off on that. I think I remember reading that. Obviously, I wasn't around then. But anyway, some NASCAR news. Jeff Gordon won the Food City 500 at Bristol. I just love the names of these races, too, the sponsorships. Food City, I think, is some kind of store or something. It's not around here. But Bristol, the short track, I love that track. It's probably my favorite one to, like, play on video games. It's short tracked and high banked. This is actually the year Jeff Gordon won his first championship, by the way. Dale Earnhardt won the first Union 400 at North Wilkesboro Speedway. I don't think they use that speedway anymore, unless they've renamed it, but I don't think they use that one anymore. Rusty Wallace won the Haynes 500. Sponsored by the underwear company, of course, at Martinsville, another short track. And then Mark Martin, I didn't write down which race he won, but he won the race at Talladega. Talk about short tracks, Talladega is one of them super speedways, as they're known. Probably one of the most famous racetracks in the country. Some football news, even though it's not football season. 49ers great Joe Montana announced his retirement from football because, of course, he'd been like big quarterback for the 49ers forever, and then Steve Young came into the picture, and then he continued that tradition. So 49ers have definitely had some great quarterbacks. I'm not the biggest fan of the 49ers. I don't hate them like you think I would, but the fact that the 49ers beat us in our first 2 Super Bowls, us being the Bengals, of course, I'm Cincinnati boy, so of course the Bengals are my team, sadly. See how that went this year. But maybe you watch this next year, you're like, what do you mean? They're in the Super Bowl. I hope. But I'm recording this in just context, January 2026. But anyway, yeah. It's funny, the 49ers beat us in our first 2 Super Bowls, and then our next one in 2021, we lost to the Rams. So hopefully the next time we go to the Super Bowl, it won't be with a team from California, but they got so many freaking teams. It's more football news. Speaking of the Bengals, we got the first round draft pick because, of course, Bengals in the mid-90s, just the whole 90s, sucked even worse than what we did this year. Like, this year we would have loved to have. But anyway, we had the first round draft pick. We picked Kajana Carter, and he ended up being a bust. It was a running back from Penn State, but really not really his fault. It's just his body was injury prone, and he kept getting a whole bunch of injuries and just never really recovered to be the player he could have been. Or otherwise, we might have had a run there. And then some sad news. Legendary sports commentary Howard Cosell, of course, mostly known for Monday Night Football. He died at 77. Take a look now at some music. Of course, me, a huge country music fan. By the way, I'm not trying to make another advertisement, but I do have an album that's coming out sometime this year. I'm probably just going to release it song by song and not just a whole thing at once. But the first single is actually going to be out probably within this week. Again, this is January 13th, 2026, so who knows when you're watching this. But anyway, it's called Back on the 90's. It's a song that I wrote. And by the way, the album cover is AI, but before anybody says anything, the lyrics are all mine, the voice is all mine. The music is a track that I got the rights for to use. But it's basically, you hear me talking about all the time on this podcast about how I hate modern music. Country is nothing but rap now, and everybody's clapping in it, and rap beats, and no real drums, and no electronic instruments. Anyway, it's basically just saying a song about I want take me back to the 90s, when and it's kind of like a heartbreak song. I want it's one of those songs where you want to feel like the pain of the song. I know that's a theme in country and that's been done before, but everything in country's been done. But you're talking about how that stupid song about tailgates and all this crap and trucks. It's just everybody does it. It's annoying. It's so repetitive. Anyway, all these songs on this are gonna sound like they came from either the 80s or the 90s, or at least I'm gonna try that way. I'm not gonna be mentioning cell phones and stuff like that. Not that there's a problem with it. It's just if I'm gonna try to make something sound like it's retro, it's not. I'm not gonna be talking about modern stuff. Oh, we met up on the. I almost said AOL. Yeah, that would have been the 90s. Maybe I should make a song about AOL. Have it start with a dial-up sound. That would be really cool. Anyway, I'm off the freaking rails this week. I'm sorry. Back to the music of 1995. I promise I'm going to try to stick to this time period. It's like the more I talk about, I'm going to stick to this time period, the more I get away from it. I should just go to the podcast. Anyway, all that was to say that I was a country music fan, so I didn't really pay attention to the Billboard charts, but I do like to give the songs on here just as a point. Billboard Hot 100 is the pop charts. The song by Madonna called Take a Bow was number 1 for 2 weeks, and all of March, and 1 week of February, so it's 7 weeks total. That's a thing with pop songs, number ones. They're always like huge multi-week things. I've never actually heard that song. Of course, I know who Madonna is, but I've never heard Take a Bow. This next song I've heard, unfortunately, to the end of time, because at least I've heard the first line of it and maybe the second line, which is the same line with just beats added. But it's Montel Jordan, This Is How We Do It. Number 1 for 3 weeks, and all of May for 7 weeks total. So another 7-week number 1. But the song always, you always hear that part. And he says it in like the nerdiest voice ever. It sounds like he's trying to be like Steve Urkel. I don't know if it's just me that hears it that way, but that's how I hear it. That song annoys me. Like, I don't know how it got so popular. It's just all I hear is this is how we do it. 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 With some electric beats and whatever the hell they had in that song. Anyway, I was listening to the good stuff, the country music. Number one for 2 weeks was Trisha Yearwood's song, Thinking About You. Great song. Followed up with a number one by Reba McEntire, because she has, over 50 number ones. Her song, The Heart is a Lonely Hunter. Another great song. Reba McEntire, I can't say enough about her. My mom loves her. I told this story before. We used to actually, during the summers, she would be working out, and then she would put on certain things like that, or her Michael Bolton tape, or Reba McEntire live. I think she had, and I think she had a greatest hits. And I would just be working out to Reba McEntire with my mom. How dorky can you get? I don't care. I enjoyed it. Other people would say it was dorky. I don't care. It was fun. Learned exercises and stuff. I should be using them more now, but that's another topic. Back to the number ones. John Michael Montgomery, huge number one. I Can Love You Like That, or as my wife calls it, the Cinderella song. I have to tell that story, even though that's 2006. By the way, it's our 20th anniversary coming up this year of getting together in March. I might do a special video on that. I don't know. But we were old school, writing letters back and forth and sending emails. Well, she was on her email. I was texting, and it was translating to email. Back in those 2006 days, she was talking about songs that she likes, and the way she is, and she'll tell you this herself, she don't hardly ever know song titles. She knows them by phrases or parts. That was called the Cinderella song because at the beginning he says, they read you Cinderella, and she knows it more for pop. I think it's All For One. I know that All For One and Boyz II Men both did songs that John Michael Montgomery did. One of them came out, I think that was the one, and then that one and I Swear were the ones that were most known. But anyway, there's no other songs like that. But anyway, that was number one, and then for only 1 week. And then Brooks and Dunn's song Little Miss Honky Tonk, which is a fun song, it was number one. But then, in May, I Can Love You Like That went back to number one for 2 weeks. Because, I was surprised, only 1 week. Well, it's 3 weeks, but just a split in the middle. But, it was real competitive on country charts. As you can see, the highest there was 2 weeks. On the pop charts, it's 7 weeks. It's because on pop charts, even nowadays, they just tend to play the same song over and over and over again. It's well, of course it's going to be number one. They're playing it so much, whether people are requesting it or not. But a little sad news, especially fans of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Burl Ives passed away at 85 from mouth cancer, and he was a singer, but he also was mostly known, or I said most famous probably for being the narrator in Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Great, obvious, iconic Christmas, got to have his songs on for Christmas. Did I hear my phone go off? No, okay. I was making sure because I thought I turned the sound off. And I guess in my head I heard it. Doot, 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 doot. Anyway, we're moving on. We're going to talk about wrestling now. I got a lot to talk about. Being April, depending on what year it is, whether it's March or April, is when WrestleMania is. This year it was April 2nd of 1995. WrestleMania 11 from Hartford, Connecticut. Definitely known as one of the worst WrestleManias in history, probably. Especially because of the main event. Even though the main event wasn't bad, it's just what it was. I'll get to it. But for WrestleMania, I kind of go through the whole card. I don't always do that with all these pay-per-views. But the Allied Powers, which was Lex Luger and British Bulldog, because they just randomly decided to put them in a team, I guess, defeated the Blue Brothers, which were Jacob and Eli Blue. They were twins, better known as the Harris Brothers, and whatever 60,000 other names. They were in the Disciples of Apocalypse, 8 Ball and Chains, and supposedly racist people. I don't know for sure whether that's true or not, but I've heard that from different podcasts, so screw them if that's true. But anyway, they were with Uncle Zebekiah, or as he's known today, Zeb Coulter, or of course he's originally Dutch Mantel. But I always love, I know not 90s, but I always love the uncles, not the uncles, but the Zeb Coulter character. Speaking of racist, that was the point of his character, but he was so dumb about it, like Archie Bunker or Fred Sanford was on Sanford and Son, or even George Jefferson. The playing the racist character, but doing it for comedy, and you end up looking like the idiot in the whole thing is the way it's done. It shouldn't be like, oh, I'm gonna make fun of these people and everybody laughs at those jokes. They laugh because you're an idiot, not because they agree with the joke. That's the way it's supposed to be anyway. But yeah, I always loved that character. Razor Ramon with 1-2-3 Kid defeated Intercontinental Champion Jeff Jarrett with the Roadie, of course, most famously known as Road Dogg later on. But anyway, he won by DQ when the Roadie attacked Razor. And the title would end up actually being held up after like a controversial match between Jarrett and Bob Holly, but then Jarrett won it back on the show called, if you remember, the WWF Action Zone, which was like one of their mini weekend syndicated shows. I don't know if it was syndicated. It might have been on USA, actually. I think I was wrong about that. But anyway, The Undertaker with Paul Bearer defeated King Kong Bundy with Ted DiBiase. This is when he had his $1 million corporation, when DiBiase wasn't wrestling anymore. Anyway, that extended Undertaker's WrestleMania win streak to 4 at the time. And of course, they weren't even counting it back then. They didn't really start counting it till like WrestleMania 18 when he faced Ric Flair. But anyway, Owen Hart and Yokozuna with Mr. Fuji and Jim Cornette, because Jim Cornette was the American spokesman, defeated WWF Tag Team Champions the Smoking Guns to win the titles. Bret Hart defeated Bob Backlund in an I Quit match with Roddy Piper as a special referee. And what should have been the main event, because it was the WWF Championship, but obviously they're going to have celebrity in the main event, trying to get anything to get, because 95 in wrestling was just was probably like one of the worst years in history in wrestling. But anyway, WWF Champion Diesel with Pamela Anderson, stacking the celebrities again. He retained his title, defeating Shawn Michaels, who had Sid and Jenny McCarthy in his corner. And then in the main event, football star Lawrence Taylor defeated Bam Bam Bigelow with Ted DiBiase, and obviously the celebrity. And the match wasn't even that bad. It's just, if you're presenting that as your main event, and I know the main event of the first WrestleMania, which is what drew everybody and made WrestleMania the hit it was Mr. T teaming up with Hogan to take on Roddy Piper and Paul Orndorff. So Lawrence Taylor was nowhere near as famous as Mr. T was at the time, but still, like I said, the match was okay, not bad or anything. It's just, it really showed how down wrestling was, that they had to have a football star that wasn't even like a mainstream Hollywood actor or anything. It was just I know it was just a football star, but I mean, when you're trying to bring in mainstream celebrities, it'd be like today if they got like, I don't even know, a good defender or something coming in or something, instead of like, one of the main quarterbacks coming in. It's just like, you didn't even get the best football player. But I'm not, like I said, I'm not trying to, Lawrence Taylor was a bad football player. It's just, as in celebrity goes, not as many people know him as they knew the quarterback. Like if they would have gotten Steve Young at the time or Troy Aikman, that would have been like huge news. But obviously they're not going to wrestle. I think their coaches would have had heart attacks. They would have gotten demolished. But yeah, Bam Bam Bigelow lost, and then would end up turning face a few weeks later. Bam Bam Bigelow, one of those ones that was never world champion, and was obviously a bigger guy, but he could do moonsaults and everything. He was like insane, way ahead of his time. ECW had 2 events. They were a week apart each, and it was called the doubleheader. They were both held at the ECW arena. The first one was the only one that they actually used clips of on Hardcore TV, though, and that was the ECW three-way dance, which is, of course, named after the main event, but also their version of the triple threat match, which I always liked better. I always liked the three-way dance better, not just the name. Like, the name triple threat match sounds better than three-way dance, but the rules of the three-way dance were, it was elimination. I always liked those better, especially on video games. Because if you ever played elimination games or elimination triple threat matches or straight triple threat matches on video games, you'll know how easier it is to win those. Because in a straight triple threat match, the first pin gets the win. So the if you're playing against a computer or even two other people or even one other person in a computer, there's always somebody trying to break your pin up. But if you're doing an elimination style match, they're like, eliminate him. It don't matter. It's just one less person. So it's harder to win those, the non-elimination. But anyway, three-way dance was April 8th, and this was actually an important event because this is the one that Sabu no-showed famously to wrestle in Japan, and which pissed Taz off because he's supposed to be his partner in that triple threat match for the tag team titles, and Paul Heyman cut a promo on him. He was like, he'd rather go make money than wrestle for you guys. And then when Sabu would get fired, end up going to WCW only for a short amount of time, and then ended up going back to ECW. And that's really the Sabu and Taz, that mega feud that they had, like one of the most well-known feuds, actually started because of something real life. Some of the best feuds do that. They take real life things and incorporate them in the storyline, and look at some of the stuff that's happened in wrestling. Some of the biggest stuff you can think of is usually a real life story behind it. But anyway, Raven with Stevie Richards and the debuting Beulah McGillicuddy defeated Tommy Dreamer, and of course this is that ongoing story between Raven and Tommy. And then they had Beulah, which is actually Tommy Dreamer's real life wife. I don't know if she was at the time, or if she just, if they ended up dating and got married. I don't remember. But I want to say they probably weren't together then when they brought her in. But yeah, just that whole Raven and Tommy Dreamer storyline from ECW is probably one of the best ones they ever did. Eddie Guerrero made his ECW debut and actually defeated ECW TV champion Too Cold Scorpio to win the belt in that. So obviously, they had big plans for Eddie Guerrero, and you see all the success he had everywhere he went. Axel Rotten defeated Ian Rotten in a hair versus hair match. Good. Bald piece of crap. I cannot stand Ian Rotten because just personal dealings with him. One, he was at this like when I started, because I work at wrestling, obviously. I'm half owner of Supreme Wrestling, but when I started there, I was just as a fan, not even started working there. They would do every once in a while these things. It was called AWA Supreme then, but they did an AWA Extreme like maybe once a month, like on a Friday night, where it'd be like hardcore matches and stuff. Anyway, Ian Rotten's there, and I was like, oh, he's cool. Because I remember watching him some in ECW, and as he walked out, like he of course he went in the ring for some promo and acted like he was bigger than everybody else. He walked out, I heard him say to somebody else, because I was wearing an NWO shirt, because I'm a fan, I'm wearing a wrestling shirt to wrestling. What a concept. He's like, look at the mark, and that's a term that's supposed to be used to describe the fans. It's like an old carnival term where, they're the marks, they're the ones that are, buying the tickets and everything. But usually when it's used nowadays in wrestling, it's derogatory, like making fun of them. They're like, look at the mark in the NWO shirt, he thinks it's the 90's. Yes, I think it's the 90's, but anyway. I was like, oh, that's real nice. And he didn't even say it to me as a heel, it's just a comment he said to somebody walking by, or not walk to somebody, one of his friends or whoever he was out there with. But anyway, more than that, he's known as a piece of crap. Run the stupid IWA Mid-South, and I know CM Punk wrestled there, and so did Eddie Guerrero, but they're the garbage wrestling with the light tubes, and they ended up getting a wrestling banned from the armories in Indiana for a long time because of the garbage wrestling, and he's a woman beater. I believe he has hepatitis or some crap and wrestles in these bloody matches. He probably still does. He still tries to run shows every once in a while, but like some of the other idiots, they run him out of town. But that's a whole other video. I think I've even talked about him on a video, but screw Ian Rotten, whatever his real name is, John something. He's a piece of crap in real life. Anyway, the main event of this show was the triple threat match for the ECW tag team titles. The Public Enemy actually won the titles from the champions, Chris Benoit and Dean Malenko, and the other team in that was the Tasmaniac, because that's what Taz was known as, the Tasmaniac. And Rick Steiner debuted for the company. I guess he was just going to do a run-in or something. But since Sabu no-showed, Rick Steiner teamed with Taz. Of course, he wasn't there long. He would go back to WCW. I think this is in between the when they went to the WWF, the Steiner Brothers, and when they went to WCW. I don't believe Scott was ever part of ECW. I could be wrong, but I don't think he was. And then the next show was called Hostile City Showdown. That was April 15th, and it was the second actual Hostile City Showdown. And the main event with this was not the main event, but the Sandman defeated ECW champion Shane Douglas with Woman to win the title. And then the main event was Cactus Jack defeating Terry Funk in the main event. And it was, of course, a crazy match when those two were involved. There was a flaming iron, branding iron that Terry Funk was trying to use on Cactus Jack. Crazy stuff. WCW didn't have a pay-per-view this month, but they did go do an interesting little show, or two, I should say. And by little, I don't mean little, but they teamed up with New Japan Pro Wrestling, and it was called Collision in Korea. It was the first American wrestling event ever in Korea. It was a 2-day event that WCW aired like 8 select matches from it in like August, not even the same month. The second day, the event is supposedly the largest attended event of anything in history. 190,000 fans were supposed to be there. There's just crazy stories. Like, if you read Ric Flair's book, To Be the Man, he tells all about this. And I've heard, I can't remember who it was, but I've seen somebody else had a story about it where they were out running and they weren't supposed to be out by themselves and they almost got shot by the Korean people. But one of the famous ones is Ric Flair was supposed to read a statement, at the press conference, for the event while he was over there, saying that Korea is more powerful and can easily dominate the United States. And he's like, I don't know what to do here, because if I don't read this, they could literally kill me. If I do read this, people back in the United States, see about it. Not only, am I going to be done in wrestling, but who knows what the government would do. But anyway, he ended up saying just something generic about them being wonderful hosts or something, so he didn't get shot or detained there. But just, crazy stuff. And, him and others, when they got back, literally got out and kissed the ground and glad to be home because they didn't know if they're going to make it. Makes me think of these freaking Saudi Arabia shows they're doing now. The one time they almost didn't make it out of the country, they were detained there. It's just, one wrong thing goes wrong and they're all gone. They're all captured or worse there. But money rules nowadays for the WWE. And I like the WWE, but they're so money hungry. I could go on for days, but back to the 90s. This event, main event of the first day was a time limit draw between IWGP Heavyweight Champion Hashimoto and Scott Norton. And I only know Scott Norton from being in the NWO and WCW. I do not follow Japanese wrestling. Don't like that style of wrestling. Has nothing to do with Japanese people. It's just the style of wrestling they do, where they literally beat the crap out of each other when they're not. You guys know the whole thing of wrestling. The point is not to try to kill somebody, but make it look like you are. But in Japanese wrestling, they not only make it look like they are, they literally are beating each other. And they've had famous wrestlers over there die because of moves going wrong in the ring, and just because of damage their bodies have taken. Anyway, the main event for the second day was Japanese legend Antonio Inoki pinning Ric Flair. And then there was one other title change before we move on from wrestling. April 3rd, Alundra Blaze defeated WWF Women's Champion Bull Nakano on Raw to win the title. And of course, this isn't the reign where she had the title and famously went to WCW and threw it in the trash on Nitro. She would lose it again and then get it back, and then she would take it there. And wouldn't have a women's champion for like another 3 years until they decided that Sable was a wrestler and they wanted her to have the title. Women's wrestling in a lot better shape now. Not that Alundra Blaze and Bull Nakano were bad. They were actually, revolutionary for their time. But I'm talking about the Sables and the Attitude Era women wrestling. Wrestling was not the skill they were looking for, if you know what I mean, when it comes to women, sadly. But move on to talk about movies now. little more pop culture than wrestling. Wrestling's a little sports niche that is pop culture, but at the same time, not as well known as like movies. You know, on movies, everybody watches movies. But one movie that came out that month that I loved, and me and my brothers watched all the time, was from the Three Ninjas series. It was Three Ninjas Knuckle Up. And doing some research on this, you know, as a kid you don't notice this stuff, but I noticed some really interesting stuff. Like the first Three Ninjas movie, the order of the movies came out was Three Ninjas Kick Back, and then this third one, Three Ninjas Knuckle Up. Well, the first Three Ninjas and Three Ninjas Knuckle Up, the one that came out this month, actually were filmed back to back. But there was some distribution rights or something that, you know, and the first Three Ninjas came out in 1992. So there's a 3-year gap between, you know, the movie that was literally shot right after that came out 3 years later. But what is even more interesting is the movie they shot third in the series actually came out second. But even more interesting than that is the actor who played Colt was the only of the 3 kids to come back for that second movie, which ended up being the third. So you got the original actors in the first one. You've only got one of the originals in the second. And then the third one, you're back to the originals, but they look younger than they did in the second movie. It's like weird. Like, I never knew that as a kid, though. You know, I don't even know if I noticed that they were different actors as a kid. You know, it's just the Three Ninjas were like the most awesome things ever. Love that movie. I do want to talk about some kids meal toys, because I love like going back and looking at like Happy Meal toys, as they're mostly known. Of course, McDonald's. McDonald's at the time had the Amazing Wildlife toys, and this was a partnership between McDonald's and the National Wildlife Federation. And they came out with like 8 of these like animal plushies, and I don't know if they were all on the endangered list or, you know, just animals that weren't like super like a ton of them, you know, because the National Wildlife Federation, I've never heard of them, but I'm assuming they're like the other ones where they're trying to save these animals. Anyway, the animals were different ones. Like I said, 8 plushies. They had the Asiatic, if I'm saying that right, lion, a chimpanzee, koala bear, African elephant, dromedary camel, I'm probably not saying that right, Galapagos tortoise, Siberian tiger, and a polar bear. There, I can say polar bear right. I probably mangled countries and languages and stuff and trying to say those. But Burger King's was more movie related, because, you know, a lot of the Happy Meal toys had to do around, you know, based around movies and TV. Not always, as you see with McDonald's, but for the most part, that's what they're mostly remembered for. Burger King was doing Goofy movie, which, you know, came out that month too. I'm not a huge fan of the movies. I've maybe seen it once, but I don't remember, so that's why I didn't even mention it in the movies. I know there's a lot of people like, oh my god, you don't like the Goofy movie from the 90's? Sorry, sue me. Anyway, there was 5 toys that came out from the Goofy movie, featuring the Goofy and Max characters. Wendy's had a pretty cool kids meal collection. They had 3D color classics, and they were like these set of like classic comics with like, and they each came with their own 3D glasses, you know, because they were 3D. It was a pretty cool thing, you know. 3D is always a gimmick that everybody goes back to, you know, especially in like movies. You know, Friday the 13th 3D was a cool concept. The Freddy movie, I think it was Freddy's Dead, was the one with, it only had like the advertised, 3D movie, and then only the last 10 minutes are 3D. And like when the character puts the glasses on, that's when you're supposed to put them on. It's like you advertise as 3D and you get 10 minutes. Then again, Friday the 13th, part 8 advertised they were going to Manhattan, and about a third of the movie only takes place in Manhattan. But anyway, that's 80s. Although Freddy's Dead, I think, wasn't. No, that was 80s too, wasn't it? Yeah, anyway. I'm all over the map and the calendar and whatever the heck. My dogs might start barking. There's dogs barking outside. Taco Bell came out with Street Sharks, of course, based on the cartoon. I was never a fan of that, but I definitely remember it, like commercials of it all the time. Popular Saturday morning cartoon. And Hardee's had something called Doodle Top Junior. Don't know what that was referring to, but it was a set of spinning tops. Of course, 1995, they were still the Hardee's that I know and love before they got bought out by Carl Jr. But I want to talk now about just like like I said before, it was the last couple of months of 5th grade, and I think I told the story before where in 5th grade, my homeroom teacher had a husband that was a carpenter, so he built this like tree house, but in the classroom. So it looked like a tree and a tree house at the top of it, but it had steps going up, and it's just like a little reading nook that I don't know what they did with it going forward. I don't know if a person got to use it every day or if it was a reward or what, but we were the ones that helped build this thing. It would have been cool to actually get to use it. I think I went up there and read once, but anyway, that was going on at the time, and just getting prepared. They would prepare you for 6th grade. During the last couple months, or during that year, you would actually go to a couple other classes. I think we had 3 classes we went to besides the normal go to health class, gym, music. Where you go to different rooms. I believe it was 3 classes that we had. Where we went to the different teachers, because they're trying to prepare you, because of course middle school, junior high, and then high school is all about changing classes, whether you had the so-called block schedule where you have 4 classes, or the regular schedule where I should say 4 classes are 90 minutes apiece, or you had a regular schedule where you had 7 classes at 45 minutes apiece. But anyway, you guys know all about that. This class. Very rarely do you stay in your homeroom unless that happens to be your first class. Homeroom is just there to take attendance, basically, the first 15 minutes of the day. Do the Pledge of Allegiance, take attendance, all that stuff. And then unless that first room is your class, you're usually, hopping around all day. But they prepared you for that in elementary school by giving you 3 classes so you would know what it's like to transfer, You don't have your same seat where you keep everything in the desk and all that. You got to take it with you. You got to use lockers. Of course, elementary school, usually they have little nooks in the classroom with the little hooks for your book bag and stuff. But yeah, just all about getting us prepared for middle school. Of course, they don't really prepare you for the fact that, I don't know about everybody else's school, but our school, there was 5 schools, 5 elementary schools, 4 or 5, I think there was 5 in our district, and of course they all go to one central middle school, and then of course to high school. But they don't prepare you for the fact that it's not just going to be you and your friends going along, in the same, you're going to be mixed in with 4 other schools, and all these people you've never met, or and it's it's very cliquish at first. I noticed that a lot of the schools tended to stick together. There would be some that, obviously there'd be some that would want to be friends with everybody, or some that knew kids from other districts because, they, just going out and exploring the neighborhood, which was a big neighborhood. We lived in Norwood, by the way, which is a suburb or whatever I say suburb, wasn't a fancy place. It's just a neighborhood within Hamilton County, so a lot of people considered it Cincinnati too. It was technically outside of the regular city of Cincinnati, but it's considered Cincinnati. But anyway, yeah, it's a big neighborhood. It wasn't like a small little town or something. So you had to go pretty far to explore all these school districts. But yeah, the first year was a lot of the schools sticking together, and then as you came to know people, that's when you start building up your real friend base. Yeah, as opposed to a small town where I moved in the end of the 90s to Vevey, Indiana. Their elementary school, middle school, and high school are literally right there. So when in that town, if you were starting out in kindergarten, you go all the way through, unless people move, you're with the same amount of people. Like I said, minus people that move or adding people that move there. But basically everybody. You're not like other schools or these 30 or 40 kids from each one that you've never even met before. So definitely a lot of different changes that go on there. But one of the things we did to prepare was we actually went to visit the middle school one day. But it was also the same day that we went to visit the planetarium, which is in the high school. And not a lot of schools have this. If everybody knows what a planetarium is, it's where you go in and they have the overhead sky. I don't know, nowadays they could probably do that with any school if you have VR headsets, but it's not the same. I'm telling you, I've never seen it on a VR headset. But if you've never been to a planetarium, these things are awesome. And I didn't even really, science was not my thing. I didn't really care about planets and stars and that stuff. But it was cool to like, because you'd like lay back in these chairs and you like look up at the stars, and they show constellations and they show planets and all this other stuff. And it was just like the neatest experience ever. And of course, our school district didn't have buses, so if we were going to the school, we walked there. It was like a mile there. Imagine elementary school, 5th graders all walking together with teachers to a mile and then a mile back. But yeah, we explored the middle school, got to go on like a little tour. Of course, they do an orientation. I've talked about that before. Orientation over the summer to really get you familiar. But we just kind of walked the halls and like looked in the classrooms, and it was just like everything was so big, because the middle school was even bigger than the high school, because the middle school originally was the high school till they had to build another high school to be more modern. But I mean, this school was huge. But anyway, that's just some of that. I do remember at this time we had these people. I told a couple weeks ago about the kid named Brendan B. that danced like an idiot, as we called it. He would dance around rubbing his belly and patting his head or doing that whole thing. And the kid was like 12 and had a full mustache. Anyway, he was our stepdad, Marky Foe's, one of his friends' sons. So he would be over to play a lot. And he was a weird kid, but so were we. So I guess we all fit in, me and my brothers. But yeah, the kid's, but the kid like was white, but his dad was like somehow like Chinese, and he was like it seemed like he was like 100 years old, and his mom was like 40. That's what we remember. We were probably way off on all this, but that's what it seemed like as a kid. But anyway, he also had a stepdad who ended up having another son that actually went to school with. Which I'd found out, sadly, he took his own life a few years ago. This kid I went to school with. We weren't friends, but, we were, friendly with each other. And, of course, our, his dad and our stepdad knew each other, but it's not like we were ever even together at the same house. But anyway, for a time period, this kid's dad, named Larry, was with Brandon B's mom, but then they broke up and he had nowhere to go, so he just ended up sleeping on our couch, like wouldn't leave. But anyway, he had like a whole bunch of stuff that he like put in the garage, and of course, us being kids, we're gonna go explore what that is. Man, I can't tell you how many baseball, football cards I got out of there. There was like old shoes and everything. I remember one time we were in there, and by the way, next month's bonus episode is going to be about my brothers. I'm trying to get all 3 of them, and they've all agreed to do an audio call with me, and we just tell old stories. This is really going to be a funny one. Even if you don't know us personally, I think it'd still be a lot of entertainment. But anyway, sorry I'm rambling on here. Jeez, I'm going forever. I'm sorry. But, one time I was in there, and my brother I was trying to get in the window because the garage door was locked, because first they were locking the stuff in there. We wanted to get in there and explore. I was trying to get in there. My brother Travis like pushed me in. I was like, trying to get in, and I couldn't get it at first, and Travis just decides to push me, and I fall and I chipped my freaking tooth. That was the first of my tooth problems. But I chipped my tooth on the garage floor, and but anyway, we got in there and was messing with this stuff. We found this time we found this. We, being poor, we didn't have sports equipment, so I always had these make these like giant softball looking things made out of duct tape just so we can play baseball. Or football, we'd take old socks and wrap them in duct tape to where it's a semi-football shape. Anyway, even before we had access to the duct tape, we found this old Nike shoe in the garage, decided to start playing football with it. And our parents seen it, so they knew what it, they didn't know where it came from, but they just, knew we played football with the shoe. Stupid as that sounds. Play football with the shoe. Well, football. I mean, anyway. I was wrestling with my brother Josh, and I pushed him, and he actually broke the living room window Like his hands went through it. Amazingly, he didn't get cut. Like, I don't know how. It was one of them old windows, I guess, so it wasn't one that, like, did a whole bunch of shattering. Just kind of went just, like, through. You know, with just a few shards of glass and then bigger pieces that fell out. But luckily, he didn't get cut up from that. But since he didn't get cut, I was going to say, hey, you know, I got out of plane. Like, we're not going to get in trouble for this. I'm just going to say there's the kids running down the street. They threw the shoe through the window, okay? First mistake, they recognized the shoe instantly. They knew that wasn't what happened. Second of all, if that would have happened, the glass would have went in, not out. So Josh ended up ratting me out, which I don't blame him for. I'm the one that pushed him. And I ended up getting in big trouble for that. But stupid stuff we did. But of course, during those times, you know, Saturday morning... There goes my dogs. Barking at the dogs outside, like I said. Saturday morning cartoons were definitely the king. Depending on the time period, I don't remember if we had Nickelodeon. But of course, we always had the local channels. Back then, you could get them easily. You didn't have to have a digital antenna, just a regular one. Sometimes you didn't even need an antenna, it just came in. Where I live now, rural area, how you say that? Rural. I always hate that word because I can't say it right. Anyway, I can't get any freaking channels on the antenna. So I can't even watch like regular Sunday afternoon football games. You gotta have Paramount Plus just to watch CBS, Peacock just to watch NBC. It's ridiculous. Sorry for the burp in there. But anyway, I have my nice Dr. Pepper strawberries and cream. Not Surge. But funny story about Dr. Pepper, real quick before I get into this. Marky Foe used to drink nothing but Dr. Pepper. And we would always sneak one because he never kept track of how many was. Like, I would, like, if my kids had done that to me, I would have known, like, because I counted how many pops I have just because, you know. You would think I'd be diabetic the amount of pops I drink. And yes, I call them pops. But I'm actually the opposite. I'm hypoglycemic. So I actually have to have them have the sugar up, which is a lucky thing to have. Unless you're out of sugar, then it's not. But anyway, I used to have this format down pat, like, because he could hear when they opened. So we had to do it sneakily. Take the shirt and put it over the thing and then slowly pull it up so you don't hear it pop. And then you'd be drinking right there by the base, because the kitchen, there was a door, which I think they eventually took off. But then it led to an outside door to the left, you know, on this little landing, like 3 steps down. But then the rest of the way down is the basement. So we'd drink it by there in case we hear him coming, because you always hear him going through the house. Which I've learned to walk like super soft, so he didn't hear me. But yeah, he was, even when he was barefoot, he was clumping through the house. But we could hear him when he was coming, so we hear him coming, take a last drink. I say we because if Josh was with me, I'd give him a drink. Obviously, he wouldn't be able to open it right. You know, like, anytime you try, we got us busted. But yeah, take it, and I go down to the freaking basement. There was stains on that wall. I don't know how he didn't figure out what it was. And of course, we had to go down and clean up the pop from the ground, but we always left the stain on the wall. There was a brown stain all over this like white wall. It was so obvious, but he was so dumb. But anyway, that reminded me of that. Going into Saturday morning cartoons, I'm going to look at the lineup for April 1st of 1995, April Fool's Day. Starting off with ABC, which at the time wasn't owned by Disney, so they didn't just have Disney stuff. We start off with Sonic the Hedgehog, the cartoon. Love that one. And then Free Willy, of course, another of the many cartoons based on movies. Then we got Tales from the Crypt Keeper. They were in reruns because they weren't on the... they were like... They'd done 2 seasons, and then they brought it back in 99, so they were on reruns at the time, but loved Tales from the Crypt Keeper, the cartoon version of Tales from the Crypt. Everybody knows me, huge Tales from the Crypt fan, as if you can't tell. Then we got a cartoon called, I think it's a cartoon called Reboot. Never heard of it. Bump in the Night, I've heard of that. I think it tried to be like Goosebumps, but it was like those generic books that tried to be like scary stories to tell in the dark. I just, they were okay, but not my thing. Then Fudge, whatever that is. Then we got the Bugs Bunny and Tweety show. Move over to CBS, where they actually had a bunch of Disney stuff at the time, because I guess they had a deal with CBS, not like bought them, but just a deal. We have Disney's The Little Mermaid, obviously based on the movie. Beethoven, which is, I believe, a cartoon based on the Beethoven movie. I believe it was a cartoon. I don't think it was a live-action series. I don't think they would have had it. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was a cartoon. Then they had Disney's Aladdin. I remember watching that series a lot, based on the movie. And we still had on the air at the time Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the classic 80s cartoon. I got the whole series on DVD. Love all that. Love the concert special. That's going to be its own watch along one day. I'm just going to watch that concert and react to it. It's hilarious. It's so cheesy and so bad, but so good at the same time. But of course, love the Turtles movies. Huge freaking Turtles fan. Let's see if I can move my one. It's not from the 90s, but see if I can move my one into the way. My little Leonardo hanging there. The other one is, it's a generic. It's not even the real Red Ranger, but my daughter gave it to me, so I keep it up there. And then I got, it has nothing to do with anything. I got this rubber chicken. Get out of the way, guys. Let's turn that all the way. I just messed everything up. It's all blurry, sorry. It's a rubber chicken. Sometimes it squeaks. Get the dogs going. Anyway, that's my little hangy thingies. You're late on your bark, Tails. Anyway, an hour of Garfield and Friends. Classic cartoon. Love Garfield and Friends. Wildcats. Don't remember that one. Skeleton Warriors. I don't remember that one. Sounds like something I might have liked. Then, of course, over on Fox, we've got... start off with Animaniacs. Classic series. Of course, when the WB would be its own network, they would get Animaniacs back because, you know, Warner Brothers, they own it. And then we got, obviously, great Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. As you can see, I'm a huge fan of them too. The episode's called Rocky Just Wants to Have Fun. I remember that. So this is obviously when they were in the Thunder Zords. You know, three of the original Power Rangers went away to a peace conference, which I've talked about this before. Okay, the Power Rangers can get, if you know anything about the Power Rangers, if you don't know what I'm talking about. They can be contacted from, you know, from either school or the park and zapped to the command center or teleported, whatever you want to call it, like just like that. Same can happen if they're on another planet in another solar system. They can get zapped back to the command center in a few seconds. Okay, so but the story was that Jason, Trini, and Jason, Trini, and Zach were leaving the Power Rangers to go join the World Peace Conference. I think it was over in like China or something. It was definitely something over in either Europe or Asia. I know for sure if it wasn't China. So you're telling me that they had to leave the Power Rangers because they were going to another country when from another universe they can get teleported back to the command center if they're needed. Yeah, they just didn't want to admit the truth as the actors left the show. But anyway, that's where we got the new Red Ranger, Rocky. And this is the one where Rocky doesn't want to... Lord Zed, which is the bad guy at the time, not Rita. I believe he'd captured Rita in the garbage can, and she was still in there. I think this was... Unless this is when she got out and gave him a love potion to get him to marry her. But, yeah, this is... Zed put a spell on him, on Rocky, the Red Ranger, where all he wants to do is have fun and play games. He don't want to, you know, help out with the Rangers. You know, eventually they break the spell. But love the Power Rangers. Extravaganza. That cartoon annoyed me. Sorry, it did. The Adventures of Batman and Robin. I never really watched that much, but I love the original Batman cartoon. Batman, the animated series on Fox. Oh, I love that cartoon. Spider-Man, another one that I sometimes watched. The Tick, another one like Eek I couldn't stand. X-Men, the animated series, I love that one too. And I'm not a superhero movie fan at all. Like, I don't watch any of these modern things, but I love the Batman, the animated series, same with the X-Men. Where on Earth is Carmen Sandiego, which is obviously a cartoon based on the computer game, and also they had the one that I knew the best was the PBS game show, Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego. I love that game show. Then we move over to what I call the NBC's lineup, which is mostly made for teenagers, and being 11 at the time, I didn't care about this stuff, and a lot of it had to do with basketball. I didn't care about that. We got Name Your Adventure, which I've never seen. Saved by the Bell, The New Class. Didn't care for that. I liked the original Saved by the Bell. California Dreams, a Saved by the Bell ripoff. And then NBA Inside stuff. Could care less. Sorry. Yeah, NBC screwed themselves when they went to that format, you know, sometime in the early 90s when they stopped doing cartoons and catered to teenagers. Because I don't even think teenagers watch this stuff. I don't remember it being high rated at all. Anyway, like I said, I don't know if we had Nickelodeon at the time. But I'll go through the Nickelodeon lineup for that day, April 1st. We start off, of course, at Nick at Night. We got the classic shows like Dragnet, The Adventures of Superman, The Lucy Show, one of my mom's favorites, F Troop, Mary Tyler Moore Show, Taxi, Bob Newhart Show, Dick Van Dyke Show, Dragnet again, Adventures of Superman again, The Lucy Show again, F Troop again. And then at 6 we start with the kids portion of the Nickelodeon. We got the Little Bits, which I never really watched. Lassie, which is a classic show which could have fit in on Nick at Night, but they showed it during, Nickelodeon times because, kids are, it's about a dog that saves the day. Of course kids are going to love Lassie. Then at 7, one of my all-time favorite game shows, or just any shows of all time, Nick Arcade. Man, as a video game lover and a Nickelodeon lover and a game show, like all three of that combined with a perfect game show. Nickelodeon Wild Side Show, I never watched that really. It was about animals. I was like, give me entertainment, I don't care about animals. Which was stupid, but some kids were like that. Then we start at 8, we've got Nicktoons, we've got Doug. Because it's a weekend, they didn't always do Nick Jr. So, we start off with Doug, one of the original Nicktoons, followed by another one of the original Nicktoons, Rugrats. And then we've got Muppet Babies, which was on, I believe, like CBS was where it was, Saturday morning cartoons. But my first experience was actually on Nickelodeon, so I thought it was a Nickelodeon show. I still include it in my, because I have a top 50 Nickelodeon shows, if you want to check it out, a bonus episode. And I still include it on there, and it's also included on my top 50 Saturday morning cartoons. Not really trying to plug those, but it's just like, you see, sometimes you see things on one channel and you think it's from there first. I always thought Muppet Baby was Nickelodeon first, but it wasn't. But still, doesn't change the enjoyment. I love Muppet Babies. Beetlejuice, the series, which I didn't care for the movies. I know, shoot me, the first one, and then I haven't even seen the new one. But I love the cartoon. And then Gumby, what a classic. There was like not even a lot going on in that, but it was just so iconic from like the 50s and 60s. Gumby and Pokey and the blockheads always after him. Then we got the Alvin Show, which was Alvin and the Chipmunks, the 80s cartoon. Oh, I love that. And the theme song right now is going through my head. Watch out, 'cause here we come. Sorry. I told everybody I'd quit doing theme songs. At least I'm not doing Muppet Babies anymore, but I just did. So anyway, that's out the window. Cartoon Kablooey, which is like, a variety cartoon show where just a bunch of different cartoon shorts. Sort of like Kablam became later on towards the late 90s, but more geared towards kids. Kablam was kind of geared towards kids and mostly teenagers with some of the stuff they had on there, but Cartoon Kablooey was just like, just shorts of different cartoons. And then we got 12, we got Hey Dude. I loved Hey Dude, about the kids that go work on a dude ranch in the summer, and the guy that buys it, Mr. Ernst, is like a stockbroker, or I think he is, or a tax, something has something to do with business and New York. But then all of a sudden he gets divorced from his wife, and him and his son ranch out in Arizona, and all of a sudden he's working at a ranch and knows nothing about cowboys and horses or nothing. My Brother and Me, I never seen that. Looney Tunes on Nickelodeon. We get our second version of Looney Tunes today. What Would You Do? Of course, hosted by Mark Summers. Variety show / game show. Love that. Of course, always followed by Wild and Crazy Kids. The outdoor, sort of like a game show, but mostly just fun outdoor activities. Love that. My brother Josh's favorite, Wienerville. Hosted by Mark Wiener. About the weird puppets, and then sometimes it'd be his head in the puppet, and they would sometimes bring up kids to the stage to put their heads in the puppets, and like I guess Mark would control the puppets, the little body, and the heads would like talk, and it was a cool participation thing. It was just a variety show really. Welcome Freshman, didn't really care for that. Sorry. Family Double Dare, my very favorite version of Double Dare. Like I loved them all, like regular Double Dare with just the kids. But Family Double Dare was always my favorite. Nickelodeon Guts, another classic. Like that was our American Gladiators. Even though we watched American Gladiators too, it's the kids version. The one we could go on, even though I never got to. U2U, I don't know exactly what that is. I believe it was one of their specials that they had. I might have even had like viewers of Nickelodeon on it somehow. I don't remember exactly. And then we got Doug again. Rocko's Modern Life, another great Nicktoon. Same with Our Real Monsters. I love that one. Freaking Disney's Monsters Inc. ripped that cartoon completely off. We got Rugrats again. And then starting at 8, of course, we got Snick. The Secret World of Alex and Mac, which I never really got into. Didn't really care for that one. Then we got All That. Our Mad TV. I say Mad TV because I didn't like Saturday Night Live. But, teen variety show. At 9 o'clock, we got the season finale of the Ren and Stimpy show, which is actually one of the 3 original Nicktoons, but they soon realized that they shouldn't be showing this during the day. It's a little too advanced for littler kids, so they put it on Snick. And then we end the night of Snick in the best way possible. Are You Afraid of the Dark? This one was The Tale of the Curious Camera. I remember that one. Man, I loved Are You Afraid of the Dark? It's my number 1 Nickelodeon show of all time. And then, of course, back 10 o'clock, we get back to the Nick at Night with the 3 different Lucy shows. We got I Love Lucy, The Lucy Show, and the Lucy Desi Comedy Hour. So, yeah, that's our Nickelodeon lineup. Fun little lineup for a Saturday. And then we will get back, talk about TGIF before we move on from talking about TV. The big show on TGIF was, always the first show at 8 o'clock, and it was Family Matters. They were on season 6. Then there was a show called On Our Own. It only lasted 1 season and only made it 20 episodes. They didn't even get the full season in before it got canceled. It was like a mid-season replacement for Boy Meets World. They didn't cancel Boy Meets World, but it was like on break. It would come back the next month, I think. But yeah, the show didn't do very well. Step by Step was on season 4, and then Sister was on their season 2 finale this month. And of course, I think they ended up moving to another network the following year. But yeah, definitely don't replace Boy Meets World. I think going forward they started having full seasons of Boy Meets. I think they did have a full season. They just kind of split it. I don't know. They should keep the same lineup, because when you change things around too much and you don't know what's on, especially in those days, it's not like you have the on-screen guide. They might have had that for some, but it wasn't everywhere. And unless you got and buy the TV guide, or sometimes you would get the lineup in the weekend newspaper of what's on cable. Usually you remember what's on, and if something comes on it's not supposed to be, it's like, what the heck is this? I don't want to watch this. But move on to some news of note. Not very good news. This was actually the month and year of the tragic Oklahoma City bombing that I want to take a little bit of time here. Not forever. I know I've been talking forever. I'm sorry. But to talk about I think it's, I don't know if it still is, it may be the biggest, most horrific, homegrown, as in, the terrorist is from here, but terror attack on American soil. Obviously 9/11 is a whole different thing, and I don't care about your conspiracy crap. We didn't fly planes into the Trade Center because George Bush was gonna say this day and this, whatever the stupid conspiracy crap is. It was the freaking Taliban. Everybody knows it, and anybody says otherwise is just some conspiracy theorist. We're probably in a bomb shelter with boards all over the place, trying to connect these dots. And anyway, that annoys me because it all it does is take away from the horrific things that happen to the victims of that, and makes it seem like, oh, it's some stupid thing and it was all political this, and just to get away from the facts that they didn't want to admit that the freaking Taliban did it. And I'm not talking about Muslims or anything like that. They happen to be Muslim. I'm not saying that's what caused it. I'm not a Muslim myself, obviously. But I'm not also one of them ones that seen a Muslim. Well, actually, we didn't see any Muslims on the street. Where we lived, there wasn't they weren't around. At least wearing the traditional stuff that Muslims wear. But if I would have seen one, I wouldn't have been like, oh, he's gonna kill me, or he's a terrorist or something. I wasn't like that. But I'm also not a oh, it had to be Americans. We made up the Taliban or some. Anyway, sorry about all that ranting. It's just that made me think of that. But yeah, this happened on U.S. soil by one of our own idiots. Not that we want to claim him. Timothy McVeigh killed 168 people that day, including 19 children, and injuring over 500 people. Like, it was terrible. Like, this bomb, he rented this Ryder truck, which is how they found him. They ended up finding the vehicle number on the axle somehow, what was left of the vehicle, and easily able to trace it and arrest him 2 days later. Like, he wasn't the smartest. They traced it to find out who rented it. But, yeah, he drove this truck right in front of the building and got in a getaway car and detonated it, and it, like if you've seen pictures of it, like, it destroyed this freaking building. Like, it was terrible. And later on, he went on to say, "Oh, I didn't know there was kids there. I feel bad about that. I didn't know there was a daycare there." But then also, closer to death, he went on to say he has no remorse and wouldn't change things. So whatever. He got what he deserved, and he obviously convicted. 2001, he stopped appealing because he didn't want to spend his life in prison appealing, so he ended up getting lethal injection. So, and he ended up having a couple, what's the word I'm looking for? Accomplices. One of them ended up getting life in prison. The other two got like shortened sentences for agreeing to testify against him. Like, I don't see why. What did they need it? It was clear cut who did it. But anyway, besides that, later in the month, the man that was just known as the Unabomber then, later, of course, identified as Ted Kaczynski, but he killed somebody with a bomb too. So it's like, I always think about this time as like, it was a more peaceful time because everybody thinks about that, about their childhood, But if you're a kid growing up in the 60s and you look at the 90s, this is like, crime's out of control. But, nowadays, I think crime's out of control. But looking back at the 90s, like, oh, it was a peaceful time. No time was ever a peaceful time, There's always something going on in every decade. It's just, when you see stuff like this, it's like you remember, like, how bad things were. And, of course, 2001, with the Trade Center, that horrific thing, and just not a very good, 5 or 6 year span there with things happening. And luckily that's not like becoming a common thing that happens around here, but I know it is in other parts of the world, and it's absolutely horrible. And I'm not trying to get into old politics and we should help this country or not, but it's just it's people can be evil. Every country, every religion, every race, every whatever. But I try not to talk about that on here too much, but it's like I'm not gonna not talk about it. It happened this month, and but when I look back, I try to remember the good times. I know, but at the same time, you can't gloss over stuff like this. And these 168 people that lost their lives, their families, are not gonna look back at this as the good times, obviously. So, and for some reason, if any of them actually, any relatives, anybody involved in that, injured or worse, are actually watching this, I truly feel terrible for you. Still, 30-something years later, feel absolutely terrible, and remember watching the news and just being horrified that day. And my thoughts are with you guys. Even still, I know, even 30 years later, stuff still hurts. It's not like it goes away. But, sorry to bring the podcast down, but it's real life stuff, and I'm not just going to gloss it over just because I'm trying to take a nice nostalgic look. Sometimes when you do a nostalgic look, sometimes you don't like what you see in the past. But that's the way it goes. It's it happened. You can't just pretend it didn't happen. You just hope something like that don't happen again. Move on to talk about books now. Just one book really. Book that came out this month was Goosebumps number 30. One of their biggest and most famous, at least I remember it the most. It came from beneath the sink. That menacing looking sponge on the cover. Like, what is this about? You got to read this. And it was, of course, episode number 14 of the very first season of the Goosebumps series. They did a really good job in making that sponge look creepy. But the end part always got me. The freaking, where they found the potato with like the stuff growing out of it. Because I'm going to admit this, and it's embarrassing, and my wife makes fun of me about it all the time. But I am terrified of freaking potatoes that have the little things growing out of it. Like, they creep me out, and the older they get, the more they grow. And like I've heard of like Undertaker, the wrestler, being scared of like cucumbers for some reason. Like, I think it's cucumbers or the pickles, maybe it's both. But If I see one of them freaking potatoes, I can't even hardly touch it. I got to pick it up with something. I can't even look at it. Those things creep me out. Anyway, that was at the end of that story. Like, after they defeated the sponge and they find the potatoes, like, oh. I was already scared of them things. But, just a couple more things to talk about. Talk about some food items. M&M's, which is always had been marketing genius. They've every year that commercial comes on with the M&M's, Santa is really him. He's real. He does. No, I'm saying it wrong. He does exist. They do exist. That commercial literally plays every year. But M&M's has always been had their M&M characters. Been great at marketing. Well, they had a huge marketing strategy this year, or this month and year. They're replacing the tan M&Ms, which I know people today's world don't even. They had tan M&Ms, because they still have the brown ones, but these were like just tan. But they're like, well, we already got the brown ones. Let's have a contest and have, which I mean there wasn't many colors left to add to it, so it's obvious probably what it was going to be, and they were probably prepared. But blue won out, and of course, everybody knows blue M&Ms. But they had a fan vote, and huge marketing ploy, obviously. But it was like so big that part of the reveal is they lit up the Empire State Building blue to like reveal what color that had been chosen. DiGiorno released its first self-rising crust pizza. It's not delivery, it's DiGiorno. Yeah, we know it's not delivery, because delivery tastes good. I can't stand DiGiorno pizzas. I don't care. It's probably their self-rising crust. There is like 50 pounds of freaking dough. Like you could just eat the crust of it and get full and not even have to touch the toppings. Not anybody would want to. I always love the topping part. The crust part, I was like, if I have something to dip it in, yeah, but I didn't really care about the crust. And DiGiorno is just, you're right, it's not delivery, it's DiGiorno, because delivery tastes a lot better than this crap. Anyway, I'd want to look at the pricing differences, because I was looking this up just for fun. McDonald's hamburgers in 1995 of April were between 50 and 85 cents each. Imagine that's not it's on special. They would do specials for like 29 cents would be their special, but between 50 and 85 cents. A Big Mac was $2.19. A Whopper was 99 cents. I mean, freaking wow. And of course, the dollar menu was definitely in use everywhere. You could get even, I don't know if you can get a large fry, probably a large fry back then for 99 cents. But there's all kinds of stuff you can get for $1. Value meals were typically like $4, and you'd even get a lot more than you get now in the today's like $5 or $6 value meals. But the thing is they were actually complaining about prices back then being too high. Imagine those people coming here and seeing what it is now. To compare, like the Big Mac, I said was like $2.19. Nowadays, it's $5 to $7 just for the Big Mac, depending on what state you're in. It's like $11, $12 to get a meal. Back then, when it was $4 for a value meal, it's crazy. But yeah, like I said, imagine if people back then would actually go and come now to today's time and look at, they'd be like, what? And that's actually that, and something I watched yesterday led me to this last part I want to talk about. I was watching this show called the series finale of the show called Saving Hope. It had five seasons, and it was like early to mid 2000s, and it was not 2010s. It was a Canadian series, and it's about this guy. It's a hospital drama, but it's also like supernatural in a way, because this guy, like the first day, he's a doctor at this hospital called Hope Zion, and named Charlie, and he gets in a car wreck. He's going to get married that day to another doctor that works there, but they're in this car wreck, and he gets in this coma, and like he can like walk outside his body, and like he sees other people that are in comas and also ghosts. So the thing is, he end up being called ghosts, even if they're just like in a coma. Or sometimes when they go out for surgery, he'll see them too. Like, you put them anesthesia. But it became a thing over the whole thing. Like, whenever he eventually woke up, but I guess because he'd been in there so long and the type of injury he had or something, he could still see these things. So he was like, thought he was going crazy at first, but then he could still see the ghosts, and he remembered everything that happened in the coma. But sad ending to that show. Anyway, long story short, There was, in the last episode, they had a guy, or maybe it's the episode before, I don't remember. Anyway, a guy that was like in his 40s, been in a coma for like 3 weeks. He fell off, it was a bike accident on the way to work, I think, and got hit by a car. But anyway, when he woke up, he thought, it was like 2018 at this point or something. He woke up, he thought it was 1997, and he was 19 years old. So it wasn't that he was in a coma that long, but that he thought he was that. And thought he was on his, going to pick up his girlfriend, to go on a date. And it turns out he's married to some woman that, obviously older looking. He hadn't even seen his face yet. So he thought it was one of his mom's friends or something, and it's his wife. But anyway, it was funny seeing him, like, looking at a cell phone trying to figure it out with. And then he picked up a tablet and was, like, shaking it because he thought it was an Etch-a-Sketch. But it got me thinking, like, what would happen if either I was in a coma that long from, like, this year, April 95, and woke up in 2026, or I just, I woke up and thought it was 2026 and I thought it was 1995. What would people's reactions be like? Like, to simple things, like, if I walked in the house right now and seen, like, me recording on this camera, I would be like, what is that thing? Because back then the cameras were these big, huge things that I think TV stations and, like, for football games, they still use the big cameras on the shoulders with, back then with the VHS tape in it. Nowadays you got this little camera with this little memory card that I put into, like, this little adapter to plug into my computer, and that's another thing. I mean, my God, computers. They'd be like, first of all, they'd be like, why are you talking to yourself? Well, because I put it on the internet and people watch. It's like, the internet, yeah, that's that thing they advertise at the AOL. You get like 15, well, that was a weird hiccup thing. 1,500 free hours or something. You got to plug your phone line into it. And Mom says I can't do that because, we got to have the phone. It's like, you don't need that anymore. I got this computer, it's wireless, that there's no wires for the internet. It don't have to do that stupid dial-up sound. Back then, whatever videos they had were like these slow, choppy things that only like the best dial-up service had. You'd be amazed. Like, not only people are not watching TV like they used to. They're not just on cable. They're watching it through the internet. They're like this year. I mean, it's obviously on over the air on NBC, the Super Bowl, but a lot of people are going to be watching it on Peacock. You're like, watching the Super Bowl on the internet? What the heck? And that's just like one example of things, like the music change, like especially for me. Like, if I woke up and put on, our local country station was B105. That was the main one. If I put that on, woke up and put that on and expecting to hear, Garth Brooks, Mark Chestnut, Billy Dean, Clint Black, Travis Tritt, the greats, Alan Jackson, George Strait. Where are they at? Oh, they're not getting played anymore. Here, we're gonna clap in these songs, and we're gonna, like, I didn't turn the rap station on. Did the B105 become rap all of a sudden? No, that's country music now. And as a side note, country music literally sounds more rap than rap does these days. Like, I've heard rap songs, and it just sounds like whiny, mumbling, almost like they're trying to sing. Meanwhile, country singers are trying to rap. It drives me crazy. Anyway, that's the way I'd be acting. I would be going nuts. I'd be flipping out. I'd be like, what in the world is going on? Like, okay, can I get a movie here in my hospital room? Can you put in a tape? We don't use tapes anymore. I'd be like, okay, what do you mean you don't use tapes? Put in a VHS tape. You know what that is? Like, no, we don't. We had DVDs. They were these little discs. Oh, I know them. CDs. Well, no, kind of like CDs. We don't use them anymore either. I'd be like, what the freak? It's like, yeah, we stream everything. We don't even have CD collections anymore. Well, I do, but most people don't. We got our streaming playlists. That's like, what? It's like, so you're telling me your people are paying for this, so they got to have internet just to listen to music when they could just have a CD collection or a tape, cassette tape collection? And then don't even get me started on the food prices or the prices of anything. tell me how much it costs to freaking buy a house these days, or a pair of shoes that aren't like Nikes, because those were expensive even then, or the price, of going to a baseball game or a football game, or the price of the freaking, even as expensive as they were then, the price of concessions at a football game or baseball game. And like, I could go on and on about this all day. It just let me know in the comments, some of the things that you would find most striking, if you're alive in 1995 and remember this stuff. If you went suddenly from 1995 to 2026, whether you traveled there, you woke up from a coma, you just thought it was that year, just, let me know the difference. Obviously, the biggest difference with me would be, I go from being 11 years old to 40 freaking 2 years old. And that difference. And then I'm not even, of course, getting into, family members I've lost, including my dad. I'm not trying to bring this down. Obviously, that stuff would be, because in the show, the guy found out, both his parents had died, and in his mind of 1997, they were still alive. I'm not talking about all that. That's depressing to think about. But just the crazy technology and prices, and let me know in the comments some of the things that would shock you the most. Sorry if this has been a long one. It's been fun to discuss this stuff. Like, besides the stuff, let me know in the comments of what would shock you. Let me know if you got any thoughts or suggestions on the podcast, any topics I should talk about, any ones you don't really like the most, like to hear about the most. Although I'll probably still talk about them because I always I do this obviously for other people to watch, but I also do this for me too, just as a way to have the memories, because I could actually, look back, if for some reason my mind's ever fading, I could actually look back and watch these videos and be like, oh, that's what it was like then, That's another big reason I started this podcast. It's not to try to make money, because I certainly am not doing that. Not because I necessarily like talking to people, but I do like talking to anybody that watches the show, obviously. But I just thank you guys for your support, whether you're watching here on Facebook or YouTube or listen to it on Spotify. It's been fun. I know we've kind of been towards the later half of the 90s, it seems, randomly the past few weeks, but this week we're going to go all the way back to the very final month of the first year of the 90s, 1990. We're going to go to December of 1990. This is our 6th trip through 1990, and I turned 7 during this month because my birthday is in December, and I was in 1st grade, so we will see you then.
And now, I predict the future. Next week, you'll be in the same time, same place, same station, for another hideous, hateful haul of horror.